This is a really good panel. I don't know why we're part two and not part one. That troubles me. But here's the thing. I feel like anybody that's going to hear me speak this year is going to hear me talk about same-store sales, and you have to innovate to increase same-store sales and grow your EBITDA, because I think we're going into a recession here. It's going to be very, very tricky. If everybody thought we were just going to acquire practices as a way of growing our organization, it's going to be difficult in this year. So I'm focusing on innovation. And we have three great panelists here that I think have products that are innovative enough that if you use them, you're going to increase the results, the EBITDA of your practice. So Sina, we'll start with you because you smarted off this morning. So we'll just kind of start with you a little bit. I do like your product, notwithstanding the disrespect you showed me. This revenue cycle management is becoming really, really important because you've got to find a way to capture 100% of the insurance dollars, and you have to do it quicker than everybody else, and you have to do it at a lower cost. And I've seen a couple DSO C-suite folks get in a lot of trouble for not managing their RCM the way they need to. And how are you sort of approaching this?
Yeah, so for us, the important thing is that if you're collecting payment data, right? How quickly are you getting the denial status? I think that's really important today. And so historically, practices and DSOs have relied on paper explanation of benefits or logging into the payer portals to manually download those explanation of benefits. And what happened during COVID, right, is when we had the shutdown for elective procedures, we then restarted. A lot of the DSOs and their affiliated practices were caught off guard with regards to the increase in patient volume, lack of staffing. And so as a result of that, the number of AR days outstanding increased. And revenue cycle management teams across DSOs today are short-staffed. I mean, that's the reality. If you go online right now and you search for open positions for directors of RCM, VPs of RCM, to me, it's amazing how many DSOs are actively hiring for these positions. And so what we're doing is we're leveraging technologies like robotic process automation and machine learning to take what would otherwise be a highly repetitive task, which is, for example, logging into the insurance portals to download these EOBs. We were then parsing the EOBs and standardizing the data. And so we have one EOB format across over 600 payers. And this then allows somebody who, for example, works at this hotel, right, to be trained in less than a week to do insurance payment posting. And we think that's going to revolutionize how RCM is done in many of these DSOs.
Now, if I understand this, part of the challenge is capturing 100% of the insurance dollars. I mean, some of the folks that do this, they can't even be assured that they've captured 100% of the available dollars, but based on our conversations, you guys are able to do that?
So it depends on the payer mix. When we look across different dental groups, verification of patient benefits, right, continues to be a persistent problem. And the challenge with that is if you have a patient, let's say that may have gone to another clinic and may have received services, let's say emergency care in that clinic, and then comes back to their home clinic, how do you know, for example, the benefits have been used up? So what we're doing is we're reverse engineering verification of benefits through looking at denial reasons and denial patterns. And we're trying to ensure that the DSOs, when they submit the claim the first time, they have a first pass rate that's high. And so to answer your question, depending on the payer, the specific payer, the type of plan that's in place, we're able to capture up to 100%, but it varies quite a bit. Sometimes what happens is DSOs utilize our analytics to be able to understand who are the top 5 payers that are denying their claim submissions, and then they're using that data to then better inform decisions such as, do I want to drop plan A and maybe offer a membership plan? Or do I want to simply just switch, right, and be in network with a different provider? So historically, that data resided in the practice management system. What we noticed is that a lot of the DSOs are not leveraging the electronic remittance advice information that's coming from payers. And so we built technology that is able to read all of these ERAs and translate them into plain English so that a front desk person that's never actually read or understands an ERA, which is again a digital version of an EOB, harder to understand than in typical EOB, they don't have to have any training, right? They can actually see what exactly is going to get covered, which affects the patient portion of collections. And so if you get the insurance portion incorrect, you're going to probably have difficulties getting the patient portion. And if you look across whether it's Google or Yelp reviews, one of the key words, right, is payment discrepancy, right? Insurance payment discrepancy often comes up in these reviews.
Do you know, we're going to ask some other questions. Do you know what the industry average is in the DSO industry for RCM cycle time, and then what type of improvement you guys can do with the automation?
Yeah, so again, it varies across DSOs, geographic markets, payers. There's union plans, right? We're noticing that payers do want to eliminate the friction that exists today. But that being said, they're also doing things like using machine learning, right, to be able to review claims and determine whether they're going to pay them. And so a lot of the DSOs are looking at their 30, 60, and 90-day buckets. But if you're collecting 98% of every dollar, but you're writing off, right, a lot of AR, you can essentially financially engineer a lot of these KPIs. They're vanity metrics, many of them, that we've looked at historically. And so we're big on looking at the big picture and not focusing on vanity metrics like what percentage of every dollar did we collect, because the AR write-off and adjustment policies that you follow are going to heavily dictate what that collection percentage is.
But just for scale, what is like a typical average of a DSO or somebody that's not automating, and then what type of improvement can they see by going over to your program? That's what I was trying to understand.
Yeah, so anytime you have your payments going above 60 days, right? If it's in a 60 to 90-day bucket, it becomes very difficult to then collect that money. There's timely filing limitations for different payers. And so we're trying to make sure that everything falls within the 30-day bucket, if you look at it from the metrics that everybody's used to in this room. And then we're trying to get the information on the denial reasons as soon as it becomes available. And the way that we do that is we have backend integration with 3 major clearinghouses, which gives us access as soon as that claim is denied to know what the status of that denial is. And some of the payers are taking much longer to pay on claims. Other ones are reducing the cycle. But overall, we're seeing up to a 50% improvement when it comes to insurance payment posting operations. And more importantly, on the AR days outstanding, we're seeing about a 16 to 17% improvement there. But again, we do an analysis for the DSO depending on the market they're in, depending on the payers that they have. And the ROI is drastically different across these payers.
All right, Peter, we're going to have to, we don't got the baseballs today. Last time I saw you, we were throwing baseballs at targets at DEO. It was really entertaining.
That should be our new gig. We're going to do that everywhere.
Well, we don't have that here, so we're going to have to come up with something. But here's the thing. I've been studying a little bit of, these analytic, I guess it'd be software programs or technology, and not all of them. I mean, to me, some of the key features are it's got to be customizable to the data that you want to see. And I know you and I had a long discussion about that. That some of the products out in the marketplace that capture data and capture KPIs are not customizable, but yours, I think what you told me is if the practice records it, you can capture it and you can translate it in a form that they can understand to very quickly make judgments, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, our approach was simply to take KPIs as an individual metric and widgetize them, for lack of a better word. Much like on your phone, you've got a widget you put on your phone. So the idea is if you come back with a novel approach to how you want to manage, say, throughput in a hygiene chair per hygienist, you can actually build your metric out by assigning the KPIs you want to the report and then automatically digitizing it, so you've basically built your own report based on the metrics that are available. If it's supported by the data, then we can give you a metric. We can simply create the widget becomes applicable. Where that really becomes important is once you've built your baseline, we start you from ground zero, and as you evolve your practice and you identify various areas in the practice that you want to focus on improvement, you can actually change your dashboard and your KPIs to reflect the next stage you want to go to, and then measure the success of the plan you put in place as you go forward. So we want to evolve with you and give you the ability to adjust what you see to what's currently, my favorite question, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Once you've solved the problem, you go to the next problem. There's never a shortage of problems.
Well,
So
I mean, and the problem you're trying to solve, to me, I mean, maybe is, you want to capture KPIs and important statistical data of your group or your DSO so you can look at it and make judgments as to how best to improve it. I mean, I think that's what you're trying to do. And what I was impressed with when we talked about, your product versus some of the others that I've seen is just it's customizable, because the first generation of this stuff just said, hey, we're going to capture these 10 KPIs, and whether you like it or not, this is what you're stuck with.
Yeah.
Yours says, no, look, you can tell us, what's important to you, and we'll make it so that we can capture it. And then I think even a step further, we can translate it in a form that's usable to you.
Yeah, well, more importantly, each segment of the business has its own dashboard. So you can have a financial dashboard built around what the finance team's doing. You have a high-level corporate operational, then you have a regional operational, and then you have the individual clinics. They can each have their own. They're looking at the same data, but from a different lens. And more importantly, the corporate can say, well, we want to focus across our DSO on this particular metric, and they can push that down to all the clinics automatically. So it's adjustable on every level.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was kind of cool is you can capture EBITDA.
Well, yeah, so we integrate with accounting systems.
That's what I'm saying. You're integrating
Yeah.
with accounting, and you're giving a report on EBITDA. And to me, this was just earth-shattering to me. I mean, look, we got to do the best we can. It's a technology conference. It's not like, an MMA fight or something. But still, as technology things go, that was earth-shattering for me, because I've told everybody, if you're a group practice, if you're a DSO, if you're a solo practice, if you're a vendor in the audience and you're doing business, your value is measured by your EBITDA. If you don't know what your EBITDA is, like, shame on you. You better figure it out. If your accountant can't tell you, you better fire your accountant and get somebody else. Like, those that have heard me speak heard that speech.
Yeah.
And when you told me that, well, yeah, we can integrate with the accounting software and we can get you your EBITDA almost like on a daily basis, that's such a powerful tool to me, because it lets you track on almost a daily or whatever basis you want what the value of your organization is.
Yeah, we have one client who, of course, all their member doctors are measured by EBITDA, and if they hit their levels, and they exceed them, they get bonused out. If they don't hit their levels, as a clawback. Really important, they have a digital EBITDA account every month, and it's always up to date and is pulled directly out of the accounting system. So they always have a measurement of where they are. And of course, if they're lagging, that's where the operational metrics come in. You need to change the business to improve on what you're not doing well to get your EBITDA up to where you want it to be. And you can see the cause and effect really quickly.
Well, it's amazing on so many levels. One, there are some DSOs in the marketplace now that if you don't hit certain numbers, there can be clawbacks or other implications. We're doing a lot of transactions now with earnouts. So, depending on where the EBITDA is, you're going to be in line. But here's the thing. You don't want to find out about it, on the eve of the earnout. Like, gee, I've got this 1 year earnout. I wonder how I did. Wouldn't it be cool if you could find out about it? Hey, 1 year from now, I stand to get a lot more money if I can do certain things. Let's start tracking this thing like immediately. And if it's not going well, maybe we can course correct and put us in a position to get the earnout.
Yeah, I mean, and even go beyond the incumbent doctor that's measured on EBITDA. You've got the organization that may be looking at various funding sources that need to provide the information to the funders, and that's really becoming more prevalent as well. We get asked for data dumps all the time related to waterfalls, where they can take a look at where the money's coming from. They look at the insurance, they look at the patient base, they look at patient attrition. All of that becomes a factor in your ability to raise capital to grow your enterprise. So it's becoming really, really prevalent.
The other thing when we were talking about some of this analytics stuff that I was fascinated by is it's not really optional anymore. I mean, nobody has to use any given product, pick the one that works for you, but you kind of have to do this because, one, your competitors are doing it. So if you're a group practice or a DSO, you have to keep up with, what everybody else is doing, or you're arguably going to be at a disadvantage. You're going to be flying blind. It's going to be like, you're on visual and they got instruments. It's really going to be difficult. But here's the other thing. If you're a group or you're getting acquired, and this was fascinating to me, a lot of the buyers are turning this on. They're hiring you as the diligence process, and they're turning it on. So now if you're using it and you know what the heck's going on in your organization, then when they turn it on you, there shouldn't be any surprises. But if you don't have the benefit of this and you're going through a sales process and you're like sloppy and God knows what's in there, and then the buyer turns it on to your organization, that's going to affect your valuation, I think.
Oh, big time. It's a double win for the valuators looking into the business. They get a real line of sight into what's going on, number one. Number two, they also see the low-hanging fruit where there's areas in the business that need to be improved that they can step on really quickly to drive the revenues up as soon as they make the acquisition. So they get a win on both sides. For the practices that are looking to exit, ideally, you're going to 3 to 5 years before you'll start going through this process to tune your business up to the point to get the value that you should get in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting stuff. We'll circle back in a second. Now, Dan, you've been sitting there patiently. It's always like the bummer. You're like the third guy. You got to sit there. But and even the other thing you have against you is, I mean, there ain't nothing sexy or interesting about like inventory management. But I will. I mean, just if we're being honest, there's just not. But you sold me on this thing, like you did. No, I mean, this is a worthwhile thing to talk about. I mean, we can't make it like that interesting. But just like, I mean, here's the thing. There's nothing interesting about a plane, that normally goes. I was victim of this from Dallas. I've been traveling 27 years, right? And the tectonic plates have not moved that Nashville's all of a sudden further from Dallas. But what has happened is, instead of it being like an hour and 5-minute flight, it's like an hour and 27-minute flight. So like, WTF, like what happened? And what happened is the airlines decided if they fly 20 minutes slower, like they save zillions of dollars on gas. There's nothing interesting about that, but that's what they're doing. And that's what you're doing with inventory. I mean, there's nothing interesting about it, but if you manage the inventory and you manage what you're ordering, or you put, like we were joking, parental controls on what staff members can buy and what they can't buy, at the course of a year across like 7,000 sucky hoses where you save $2 per unit, it really adds up and is going to increase your EBITDA. I was fascinated by it.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And it is really about taking something that maybe is not as exciting, but being able to act on it. And so, since we're kind of a circle of trust here, what I get excited about is looking at some of the data related to procurement. And this is an interesting time of year because I see what the staff buy for their break rooms. And let me tell you, Halloween is not just for your patients. The amount of sour gummy worms
Snickers
that
bars or something that shows up there.
Yeah, you wonder if they get them delivered to the back door of the facility, but they're buying. It's a spike this time of year that the candy purchases. But
you think they're misappropriating candy and taking it home? If I had to,
I don't know. Or is it a
that.
business development tactic? All right, here, take these home, and we'll see you next month.
Or let's feed them to our patients to get more cavities, I guess. Too.
Right. Yeah. Bring them back. But procurement has a role that I think is very unique from the great solutions that we've all talked through those last couple of days. And let's face it, most of those solutions are on the revenue side, and that is the sexy side, right? But EBITDA is comprised of an expense component, and we can't lose sight of that, right? Yep. And when we lower our expenses, that goes right to EBITDA. So you almost have a trade-off that you can evaluate in terms of strategic initiatives you want to pursue. Either one can drive to that bottom line, but you're going to have to produce about 3 times as much dollar value in new production as you would saving an equivalent amount through better procurement. And a lot of people can't produce more. You're at max capacity for your staff, for your doctors, for your operatories. So we advocate for let's turn some attention, let's turn some energy and some investment to the expense side of the equation. And that's where procurement tools and technologies come into play. I've been full-time in procurement tech since 2001. I'll give you a little founding story if I may on method, but we are a tech-forward procurement solution that basically delivers a private marketplace for your organization to buy efficiently, effectively, and in a compliant manner with those that you want to do business with. Now, everybody's experts in procurement because we buy in our personal life. And in a dental setting, that works against you, right? Because it's kind of hard to corral people to doing the right thing. And that's where the technology comes in. I always like to give people a few nuggets of value in these types of talks that you can take home. And with spreadsheets or the back of a napkin, right, you can do procurement better. I guarantee you there's something all of you can do better in procurement. But the technology makes it so much more efficient and effective and puts it on parental controls, like you said.
I mean, what I thought was interesting from the conversation we had the other night, maybe I had too much to drink, but I thought it was really interesting because, one, you can cut on your training time. You know, if you got staff members, and everybody's short-staffed, right? Everybody is short-staffed right now. And the biggest problem is, even if you find somebody, usually you got to onboard them, and that takes weeks. But if you put, what I was joking was like parental controls on the system where they can only order the appropriate things from the formulary at the appropriate price, even a caveman can do it, like the commercial. You can put them on there, and anybody can do that with minimal training. The other thing is, don't you have real-time data? If you've got 10 offices and office 7 is buying off the formulary at higher prices, you can figure that out really, really quickly and course correct, it sounded like.
Right, and that's really where in 2022, the amount of data that we leverage and how we leverage it, that becomes that strategic advantage. So a lot of our platform goes to supporting processes, but the really sexy stuff, I think, is the market data about similar products being available through multiple distribution options that you have in the market. Now, many of us as serving DSOs, and this is certainly a big focus for us, we already have our favorite supplier. And you may have all kinds of reasons for justifying that to yourself. Those justifications need to be revisited annually at least, by the way. But the other thing that we find is supply chain disruption, right? So your favorite supplier may not have those items in stock at the same delivery lead time that you're used to. And so that starts to have a direct impact on the patient experience. And so we help people with both, because we've got the data to show availability and pricing from the various options that you have. And it puts, when your team is used to going to soandso.com and on their website, and you're trained in doing that, there's a degree of lock-in that occurs. It's very, very powerful, right? Your team is being upsold and cross-sold every time they're at vendor.com.
Yeah, but it's not just a way. I mean, it could be emotional attachment to a rep that comes to see you that you're friendly with, and I'm a relationship person. I mean, that's important, but at the end of the day, wouldn't you at least want to have the data point that, maybe I love this rep and they've got other value adds besides price, so I'm going to keep using them, but I want to see how I could save by going elsewhere, or leverage it. You could say to her, look, love the fact that you take me to the golf tournament every year, and you come in here and you're really cool, but I can get this for this other price. What can you do for me?
Yeah, the data is the power behind the method. So we teach and enforce with our technology methods of doing procurement well with excellence. And that includes things like RFPs, RFQs. It includes a total value analysis. So you look at those other factors. It also includes the cost of your staff's time. So even if you are not ready to sort of nickel and dime your favorite supplier to death, which I don't advocate for, that's bad procurement strategy, you have the data to back it up. And that changes the relationship between you and your suppliers, because you're able to, instead of asking the supplier for, hey, what did I buy and how are my costs going up, which you all should do, by the way, that's low-hanging fruit. We all can have those conversations with our supplier, especially this year. Show me where my costs are going up and why. And partner with me in driving those savings back to my practice. And a good supplier is going to be happy to do that. That's their expertise. They're going to talk to you about why certain classes of products might be escalating higher than others and what your alternatives are. Maybe it's now time to switch to that private label product. So use the suppliers for their expertise, but have the data in-house that is supplier agnostic. And we are a supplier agnostic platform. So have that data in-house and be willing to look at it once in a while and call your suppliers in for those conversations.
No, and I do agree. Price is the refuge of the weak. I mean, this is not, I want to emphasize, this is not some like discount thing where you can save 5 cents and that's what you're trying to do, but it just arms you with a lot of knowledge that I think can be very, very helpful in your relationship with the vendors.
Yeah.
Sina, give us a case study or something about the value add of RCM,
Yeah, I think going back to the presentation yesterday with regards to like what RCM is, right? Like it's truly revenue, and what's interesting for me is that oftentimes the provider's already delivered and rendered the service. And how many providers today in the room do you have working at your DSO that's getting paid on a percentage of revenue versus collection? So anybody today paying out on a percentage of revenue, raise your hand.
Should be nobody. I mean,
right.
It's collections. So, I didn't even look, but it should be nobody.
Right. So having run a private equity backed DSO, I can tell you that if you're not collecting from the payer or the patient, right, that's going to have a direct impact on the income of your associate and your principal dentists. And what happens when the income of the associate or principal dentist goes down? They have a chat with their spouse, and the spouse says, you're earning X, you could be earning Y, right? Why don't we consider this other career opportunity? So for me, the ROI of RCM is retention. It's retention of the dentists that are working for you, especially ones that you're partnering with. You're taking some equity, right? They're taking some chips off the table, but now they're relying on your RCM team to be able to collect the revenue. And what's great is that you're able to collect it on time, but what happens though is that when you're not able to collect it on time, the dentist gets upset. There's a ripple effect on the team, right? Because then they will blame the front desk, maybe they'll blame your RCM team if the RCM is centralized. And this then has a lot of consequences because then you start losing corporate staff because who wants to deal with an angry dentist calling head office every couple of weeks? And so having run P&L for a DSO, that's really the ultimate connection that I see that often gets missed, right? When you think about RCM, because everybody thinks it's payers, getting the money from the payers, but ultimately you're trying to get that money so that you can pay these dentists that are working for you, pay your hygienists on time, right? Now, most hygienists are not getting paid on a percentage of collections today, but if the costs on the operating expenses continue to go up, there is a world where some of the DSOs are going to opt to only pay out based on collections. And that, again, have an effect on retention.
No, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, if you're making, 35% of collections and the collections are down, you're going to get less money, and then you might lose the associate. You might lose staff members because the associate's lashing out at the staff members. And also, it just helps you run a more valuable organization if you can, if you have a quicker cycle of collecting funds. I mean, it seems. Let me ask one more question, and I'm going to give everybody else last word here on some other things. What is the particular, distinction of what you're doing versus, we had some other RCM folks here, and you're with me now. So what is the particular value add of what Zentist is doing in the marketplace?
Yeah. So full disclosure, yesterday's presentation around RCM. I used to advise this company. We started 6 years ago, and what really stood out for me when I looked at Zentist was, frankly, the engineering talent, right? Because I always believe that you can fix a product, but it's very difficult to fix a team and fix a culture. And so I attribute our success to A, never giving up, and B, having best-in-class talent on machine learning and RPA, which is, again, we're competing with the Googles and the Netflixes of the world, because the reality is, if you're an ML AI engineer, you're in huge demand despite the downturn in the economy. And so it's being able to attract the best talent, and then it's taking that talent and bringing folks to the team that have the operations experience, that understand revenue cycle management from the perspective of the providers. So the reason I came on board was because I've run a private equity-backed DSO, built it up from 7 offices and continue to grow it. And the combination of the engineering talent and the DSO operations experience just ends up providing better solutions to the marketplace. And the other benefit that we have, given the fact that we work with DSOs like 10 Dental, Gen 4 Dental Partners, and many more, is we get to sit in the room with some of the brightest minds in revenue cycle management. And there's not a lot of them, in the sense that, as we know, prior to the consolidation trend, RCM was an acronym that anybody really understood, because the average solo practice looked at insurance billing, right? And it was very task-driven, not super strategic. And so given the fact that there's a finite number of RCM leaders in the industry, one of the things we've done is put together this dental RCM bootcamp. And our goal for that was to bring the best minds together on the technology side, on the operations side, on the RCM side, and start developing solutions with industry partners, start developing better technology that the front desk can actually use, right? Because one of the complaints that they often would make is, the existing having 6 screens open is not really conducive, and I want to be able to maintain that relationship with the patient, and so the user interface of whatever you build has to be intuitive.
Yeah, so I mean, you guys are, my sense is not just providing the product, but you're becoming a little bit of a thought leader in the space. And I know you've got your boot camp. So I think it's going to be first quarter of next year. So we'll look out for that. I think I've been promised I might get to like show up. So we'll see. I'll be watching that closely, but really, really appreciate it. Let me ask Peter, and then we'll go to Dan for sort of last word here. What was the most impactful conversation, you had with a DSO about the value from the data collection, through your product?
Well, there's a couple of trends that we see going on right now that we're heavily involved in. My friends at Shine One talked a little bit about it when they were speaking. One is the acquisition of clinics into DSOs and not changing the incumbent practice system you're on. We speak more practice management system. I call them languages. We speak over 30 languages. And what that does is it allows them to bring in doctors, not change the practice metrics, which is really important. And at the corporate level, they get the integration of all the information that they need to be able to run their business. Take that down the road where the evolution is to the cloud. And I don't think there's any argument about that. I think it's early, but that's okay. I'm thinking 3 to 5 years out, there's going to be a much more critical move. And you've got a corporation now running with 100, 130 clinics, and you're on these dashboards, and when they do the move, everything falls apart and has to be rebuilt. That doesn't happen with us. We actually mitigate the transition for them. We manage the legacy server, we manage the new system they're going on to, and we speak to all the cloud systems that are out there right now. We integrate the legacy with the cloud, so it's back to a common platform. Case in point, DSO acquires a clinic. They buy the AR from the clinic. The legacy server sits there. They'll pay 60% of the AR outstanding, but it's up to them to collect it now. That server gets forgotten. Nobody pays attention to it. What we do is we look at the server, we pull the AR, the client's coming in on the other system, and we put the AR alert onto that system for them. So they can actually collect the AR without having to look at the legacy system. First off. Second off, if the client's not coming in, we can actually put out the call list on the old AR and help them collect it automatically. So it's really effective at A, creating the template on which you go forward, and B, migrating with you as you go into the new systems in the future without any interruption at the corporate level. You're going to have the interruption with the PMS at the clinic level. We can't change that, but we can simplify it for the rest of the organization.
No, I mean, that's really good. I mean, anytime you're transitioning to new, I think they always make up these terms. Like the term now is like change management or whatever. It just means people like it sucks. Like all of a sudden the shit doesn't work anymore.
That's not a new term, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I know, but everybody's got these terms. But it just means people are change resistant. But if you can do it with the least disruption possible, I think you're going to have a leg up. I mean, I understand it won't be zero, but all right, Dan. Last word here. How much of a difference can this make? I mean, I like it. The more I talk to you about this, the more I like it. But can it literally be like the airlines where they save millions of dollars by going a little slower and saving on fuel? If you're a big organization with lots and lots of locations, how specifically impactful can this be?
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of our category of software is that there is a quantifiable hard dollar ROI that is not measured in terms of efficiencies alone. So, for example, we look at a typical $1 million in production dental office. They'll have about $225,000 in what we call addressable spend. Now that breaks down into things like facilities, dental supplies, lab bills, office supplies, miscellaneous. Always got a miscellaneous category. And out of that $225,000,
is that Halloween candy?
Halloween is a big driver, absolutely. You look at the different subcategories, and through procurement disciplines of different types, you can save between, conservatively, and I like to stay on the conservative side of this, between 6 and 12% through the application of good procurement techniques. So you start to add that up, and we're looking at somewhere between $14,000 and $30,000 per $1 million production office per year. And that actually can scale further when you begin to look at your team's time. Now, again, conservatively, between $1,000 and $5,000 a year of team time is wasted in non-value-add procurement-related activities, some of which are things like panic buying, expired products that have to be dealt with, lots of leakage through your team's time. So those two together, right? You're looking at for a software product like ours that costs rough numbers about $200 a month. So less than $2,500 a year, you're getting 5 to 10 times that in return per location by embracing these truths that we're really borrowing from other industries. This is not, when I joined in 2018 and it was time to create this, the need in dental was obvious to all of us. But the question was, do we build our own platform? Can't we take something off the shelf? And so what we realized pretty quickly is there are a lot of distinct processes and need sets in dental. And so that's what founded Method was, let's build it right size for dental. So we can realize these savings and draw that to the bottom line. And then the fact that DSOs are accelerating only adds to the impact because your buying power starts to take off. And I think the overall theme that we see is accountability for profitability is starting to become a focus. It's not just growth for growth's sake. Growth profitably is beginning to become the watchword as the cost of funds goes up. So I think we're entering an era now where procurement will have its chance to be a hero again, and then they'll put us back in the closet later.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating because I went to before we wrap up, I went to like this leadership group, and there were some executives from like Walmart and Costco there, and they were like laughing, we got to talking about what we do in the industry, and they were almost like chuckling at us, like we were the dumbest people they've ever seen, and it was a little insulting. But when they started saying stuff to me, I was less offended by like their mocking and more listening. And they said, we don't open up a Walmart or a Costco until we figured out how to squeeze every last penny out of every store that we have. And once we figured it out, we go open up another one. You idiots just buy shit. They're like, you just keep buying stuff without regard to, what you're buying. You're just like, oh, I want another practice. I want another one. And you just keep buying things, and then you never take a step back and figure out how to squeeze every penny out of it. But I think with this recession that's coming, I think there's going to be a reckoning, and maybe we're not going to do it as ruthlessly as Walmart or Costco, but we're going to have to account for every penny and start squeezing out every penny we can in same-store growth. But this was a great panel. I really appreciate everybody being here, and thanks, everyone. This was our panel today.